I regret taking those unsubstantiated claims at face value, and I'm genuinely sorry for that. And it is very important that I get that out there. And thank you for your attention.
So, I mean, that is a hostage video apology. He doesn't mean it, of course, but he's done what shills do to keep their jobs. Breaking right now, Katie Hopkins has made an audacious bid to replace James O'Brien on LBC, the Labour broadcasting company, after that intellectually dishonest, nasty fool had to make a grovelling apology after clearly anti-Semitic comments sparked outrage amongst Jewish folk. Here's the post from Katie this afternoon. Dear Ashley Tabor King, copying in the boss of Global Radio that owns LBC. I do hope you are well. As you recall, you fired me from my LBC radio show for a tweet unrelated to my show. I have served penance. Please, can I have James O'Brien's slot? My Jewish family would love it, and I can beat his numbers. Katie. With a little love heart emoji, copying in the off-communists. And of course, I have absolutely no doubt Katie Hopkins would thrash him, would absolutely thrash him in the numbers. But remember, that's not what this is about. LBC, and Charlotte Gill has done great work on this for a long time, is part of now a global propaganda network designed to push particular narratives, and James O'Brien has to be protected at all costs, no matter how many muck-ups he makes, no matter how anti-Semitic he is. But luckily, sane people in the media are noticing, like Mike Graham, who responded saying, what an absolute horror show, describing James O'Brien as the mid-morning moron. When Lance Foreman, the highly successful Jewish businessman, replied saying, should Ofcom step in, Mike, or are they as useless as I suspect they are? This pig incites hatred. It's not even subtle anymore. Mike replied, saying, scumbag of the highest order, feel free to report him. Now, I guess I've got a pretty unique take on this, given the off-communists ended my career at the very, very weak GB News. And I would argue, actually, no, this is on LBC. This is on the owners of LBC. This is on Global. Let's stop believing that any type of state censor can or should do the right thing. They're there to protect James O'Brien because James O'Brien is there to protect the Labour government. But what this says to me is actually that Global and LBC is just a morally bankrupt organisation because they're going to keep backing this guy who hates its listeners. So here's what happened, by the way, if you did miss the story, and I will play you the deleted clip in just one moment, but let me take you through the story from the Jewish News, which writes, James O'Brien sparks fury after reading out anti-Semitic blood libel about Jewish children live on air. They report that the LBC presenter repeats a claim that at Shabbat school, UK Jewish children are taught that one Jewish life is worth thousands of Arab lives, and that Arabs are cockroaches to be crushed. Now, Jewish News reports, while there is certainly a concept of Sunday school for Jewish children, there is no such thing as Shabbat school. A campaign against anti-Semitism spokesperson described the comments as a modern blood libel on national radio, amplified by a host who likely wouldn't think twice about cutting off the caller were he promoting such grotesque falsehoods about another minority. No such generosity for the Jews. The organisation further described the comments from O'Brien as not only a baseless fiction and totally repugnant, but to broadcast it is unbelievably reckless. It is practically an invitation to disaffected people to target Jews in the UK. Why not if they are a side in this conflict? It is deplorable, the depths that some talk show hosts will sink to inflame their listeners and drive up ratings. The consequences are borne by British Jews. And perhaps what's most astonishing about this whole thing, right, is that James O'Brien and his woke team at LBC were so proud of this piece of content, they actually posted it themselves on X before quickly U-turning and trying to scrub it from the internet. But don't worry, I've got the receipts. Here's what was broadcast. Can you believe that more than half of you are watching this video but not subscribed? So please do me a huge favor. Click the subscribe button now. Turn on the notification bell so you'll be alerted to all of our brand new Outspoken videos.
Wife was brought up Jewish, and at Shabbat school in a leafy Hertfordshire town, she was taught that one Jewish life is worth thousands of Arab lives, and that Arabs are cockroaches to be crushed. Whilst young children are being taught such hatred and dehumanization, undoubtedly on both sides, as Chris points out, then they will always be able to justify death and cruelty, and it does indeed start young. But there is a danger, perhaps, that we only ever hear one side of the dehumanization and propaganda processes.
Stephen Pollard posted in result, in a world in which Jew hate was not being normalised, the truly Goebbels-like lies about Jews broadcast today by James O'Brien would mean no decent person would ever give him the time of day. I don't see how what he said could be dismissed as a mistake or an error of judgment. No one capable of understanding English could be in any doubt as to the meaning of what he was reading. O'Brien has crossed a line that cannot be uncrossed. From Gareth Roberts, who I have a huge amount of respect for. I think cancelling is hardly ever justified, but this should be the end of O'Brien's career. Since LBC just did a dirty delete of this horrendous racist incitement read out and broadcast by James O'Brien, I thought it important that there be a recording of it. And he then posted it and said he wants people to see the nasty made-up propaganda which is being spread with complete impunity about Jews. And from Dove Foreman, this is disgraceful from James O'Brien, platforming a modern blood libel against Jews live on national radio. There's no such thing as Shabbat school. No Jewish child in the UK is taught that vile racist nonsense. This is a stain on LBC and its producers. So what happened today? James O'Brien delivered not on video because he's too weak for that. What I describe as the hostage video apology. We've all been there. I've been there. Megyn Kelly's been there. You always regret it after you've done it. But I have to be honest. Given what a complete prick this guy is, it's actually quite beautiful listening to him know that he's having to read this out because he has to save his job. He has to save his £400,000 salary. He has to keep putting his children through posh public school, even though he pretends to be a man of the people. So today, what was proven is that James O'Brien is just as much of a shill as anyone else in the mainstream media. Listen. The reason you're watching this show is because you know that these days, and we've been discussing it lots at the moment, it's impossible to trust the mainstream media or the so-called fact-checkers who claim to patrol social media. And that's for a very good reason, given the Brexit debate, COVID debacle, and demonisation of Donald Trump. But I've got the solution for you. Today's sponsor, Ground News, created by a former NASA engineer to provide you with the only safe way to consume the headlines, is going to solve so many of these issues. Go to ground.news/outspoken to check it out for yourself, by the way. But I want to show you this incredible website and app in action. So let's take the recent story. We've discussed it lots of Outspoken of Elon Musk's fallout with Nigel Farage over Tommy Robinson, which the left-wing legacy media tried to whip up to destroy all three men, actually. And by looking at Ground News, you can see very clearly that it's collated the 230 sources on this story in one place. But what Ground News instantly shows is how the story is being covered by the media and broken down by whether those media organizations lean to the left or right, illustrated by its biased distribution service, which features on all stories. Then you can scroll down and actually see every article about the topic broken down by the political position or ownership of the publication. So in this case, it shows quite clearly that Fox News gave a fair analysis compared to Mediaite and The Independent, which did not, lambasting the men as morons with big egos without actually looking into why this split happened and how it can be resolved. What's more, Ground News gets to know you personally, providing you with the news stories you're interested in, while also analysing your own biases and coming up with potential blind spots you might not be hearing about because of your media consumption. And look, I know you love the news, that's why you're watching Outspoken, but you don't trust the legacy media. But what Ground News does is give you the tools to understand the truth about what is going on in the world. It is the only way I read the news now, allowing you to see through media bias and manipulative narratives with no more relying on the MSM to define what's really going on for you. So go to ground.news/outspoken to check it out. You can subscribe through my link today for 40% off the Vantage plan, which is what I use for unlimited access. And I should say, by the way, Ground News is a really great organization. It is subscriber funded, and by supporting my sponsors like Ground News, you also support my work too. And for less than a Netflix subscription, you can get all the world's news in one place and think for yourself. It really has been a game changer for a news junkie like me. So let me just repeat the address. It is linked in the show notes below, or you can click on the QR code if you're watching on screen. But the address, ground.news/outspoken. But now, back to the show.
This is very important. At this time yesterday on the show, I read out a message from a listener called Chris, who said that his wife had been brought up in the Jewish faith and had attended what he described as a Shabbat school. He went on to make further claims about what he said she had been taught in that school. As with all the texts and messages that I read out on the programme, I did so in good faith, but the message has understandably upset a lot of people, and I regret taking those unsubstantiated claims at face value, and I'm genuinely sorry for that. And it is very important that I get that out there, and thank you for your attention.
So, I mean, that is a hostage video apology. He doesn't mean it, of course, but he's done what shills do to keep their jobs. Let me bring in my superstar panel now. Chris Davies of True Conservative Media and Father Calvin Robinson of the Common Sense Crusade on Lotus Eaters. Now, look, this is a really interesting one, Chris, because, of course, James O'Brien, he's like the witch hunter in chief. Okay, so he's always waving the pitchforks. I mean, he was waving the pitchforks about Lawrence Fox and me, about Father Calvin Robinson. You know, he is the first to try and cancel anyone. And I guess the thing is here is it wasn't... It's a tough one because they were not his words that he was reading out, but it was very, very clear that this was not something that he even thought deserved to be questioned. I guess for me, what's so shocking is that there's no desire to cancel James O'Brien. He makes his little apology and everyone goes on. You know, it's totally different to the reaction, for example, of Lawrence Fox saying he doesn't want to shag a woman. It just does show you that when the deep state, when the mainstream media want to protect someone, want to keep someone in post, they will continue to do so, no matter how grim their actions.
He is a loathsome human being, Dan. I don't believe for 1 second that he's remotely sorry.
No.
I think your claim is quite right that it was a hostage video. But I would go further. I'm not even convinced that Global themselves are sorry. I think that, you know, O'Brien has been allowed to get away with... I believe in free speech. As you know, Dan, I'm a free speech absolutist, so I wouldn't want to curtail his speech. But some of what he has said over the years is way beyond the pale. And free speech has consequences, as we all know. I'm quite happy to say whatever is on my mind, but I accept that occasionally there may be consequences for it. James O'Brien is on the ins, and people like you and Calvin and Lawrence are on the outs. And therefore, he gets protected. He's part of the narrative. He's part of Team Love It, and we're part of Team Exit. And the net result of this is that he will continue to be emboldened. He will do this again. He will face no consequences, and things will continue to get worse. And unless and until there is proper recriminations, there are proper recriminations for his actions, he won't learn. Naga Munchetti, you've commented on this regularly, another example, versus John Turode singing a song lyric, sacked.
Oh, totally.
It's madness, Dan.
Totally. And I've been really clear on this. It's like, I'm not calling for Naga Munchetty to be sacked, but I just wish that there were not these constant double standards, Father Calvin.
Exactly.
Yeah, they are double standards. I do think James O'Brien is particularly a hate-filled little individual. This example went over my head, but I've certainly heard him say hateful things in the past. And like Chris says, I'm in favour of free speech. If he wants to be a hateful little troll, let him. But let's expose that and highlight that. What interests me about this whole thing is he seems uncancelable. I don't know why, but either he is very much in line with the thinking of Global and the thinking of the people who back him, or he has something over. I don't know. He's been horrible for years.
Totally. I mean, think about Carl Beach. Think about Carl Beach. Like, he propagated that absolute scam, you know, the paedophile who was suggesting that actually he was part of some, you know, huge sex ring, which brought down the reputations of a whole load of totally honourable people. Carl Beach, now locked up for an extended period because he's a paedophile, and James O'Brien spread that. Now, you know I don't use the term conspiracy theory, right? Because it wasn't a conspiracy theory, it was a lie. It was just a flat-out lie from a convicted paedophile, and James O'Brien suffered absolutely no consequences for that in his career. I laugh at Lawrence Fox saying he doesn't want to shag Ava Santina, and my mainstream media career is finished. I mean, God, in hindsight, thank goodness it was finished, because we're doing something so much more exciting here. But you can understand how galling it is. How galling it is. Like, what someone like James O'Brien can get away with. I also do agree with you both, though, that it's a difficult one for us because, of course, we are free speech absolutists. So in some ways, I would much rather James O'Brien just have the balls to say, no, I'm not apologising. Sack me if you want. I'll go and do the independent thing too. But this is the hypocrisy. He does still want his £400,000 big corporate salary because James O'Brien is a fake. Can I just tell you that? James O'Brien is one of the biggest fakes in the media. He doesn't believe any of the shit that he spouts. This dude was a right-wing journalist for the Daily Express. Okay, he came from a very similar background as me as a showbiz reporter, went through the newspapers. He saw which way the wind was blowing. So he's a fake. He doesn't even really believe what he's saying, which makes all of this worse. Interesting this point from Sarah Deach too, Chris Davies. She wrote, it wasn't just James O'Brien at fault here. Think of the long line of LBC staff whose desk it crossed, the producer gathering text, the editor overseeing, the social media person who decides that particular text deserves to be posted to their 687,000 followers. Lots of people thought it was all fine. Again, I'm not one to necessarily think, oh, censorship is the way forward, but I do think this makes an interesting point, Chris, which is that anti-Semitism is now very baked in across our mainstream media. It is now an accepted form of racism. I really do believe that in modern Britain.
It's spot on. And Diane Abbott may see it differently, but I can tell you now, Dan, that this is across the country. It's across our institutions. It has been normalised now to hold anti-Semitic views is almost mainstream. In fact, arguably, for those on the in team, it is already mainstream. And you start looking at the makeup, the composition of our MPs and the growth in support of those who are pro-Gaza, pro-Palestine action, and the new so-called No Hope Party of Sultana and Corbyn and the sort of numbers that they will potentially be getting. And this is going to get worse. It is not going to get better. I don't know who's decided that it is tolerable to have rampant anti-Semitism in a country that fought the Nazis to defeat it 80 years ago and won. But we're in a very different place to where we were 80 years ago, Dan.
Totally. Can I just say, though, Father Calvin, how good would it be? How good would it be to have Katie Hopkins back? I mean, honestly, I know it will never happen, and I know she's just sort of poking the bear and making a very brilliant point, by the way, which is, you sacked me, bitch. You sacked me, bitch, for a tweet that wasn't even on the radio, Ashley Tabor King, and yet you're going to stand by this guy. But actually, she would kill it. Like, if Katie Hopkins were given the 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. slot on LBC, she would kill it. But I actually sort of don't want that to happen because I think she's much more powerful in the independent space, and she doesn't need to go back to the mainstream media.
But you're right, she would. I don't know who still listens to LBC. Apparently some Uber drivers or something still have it on in their cabs. But other than that, I honestly don't know who tunes in. But it would be nice to have some diversity of thought and opinion, wouldn't it? I have 1 week left after this week of my Common Sense Crusade. It ends next week. I would love for Katie Hopkins to be my final guest. If you think that's a good idea, tweet me and Dan and tweet Katie and let her know.
Oh, that's a great idea. But Father Calvin, I didn't know the Common Sense Crusade was ending.
Yeah, we're going on a hiatus at the end of this month until I'm back in the UK. It's just too difficult being away from it all, but also it'll be nice to have some respite from the craziness that's happening in the UK.
Yes,
while I'm
although
here.
you'll still be here, I hope.
I will still be here. This is my nugget of UK news every week.
Father Calvin Robinson. Okay, 1 more week of the Common Sense Crusade on Lotus Eaters, and Chris Davies of True Conservative Media. Thank you both so much for being here today. Thank you.
Cheers, Calvin.
Thank you so much for watching Dan Wootton Outspoken. Please click on my face just to the bottom left to subscribe to this brand new independent news source and turn on the notification bell so you'll be alerted to our brand new live shows, uncancelled interviews, and special royal episodes. Outspoken is also now available as a podcast, so you can listen to the show every weekday on the go, wherever you are.